right, good morning. Happy Saturday. I'm so glad that you guys have decided to join us this morning. We're so excited for this very necessary and incredible conversation. We have an incredible panel for you guys. Before we jump into today's event, my name is Shari and I will be your wonderful moderator today. And I am the Director of Operations for an incredible company called Pipelines Mobile, which is a mobile app that connects underrepresented talent to job and training opportunities in tech, entertainment, and creative industries. And we'll be dropping information about Pipelines in the chat so you can download the app and begin to connect to these opportunities today. Okay, so before we jump in, I just want to explain why we're here today. So obviously this is an Editors Union one-on-one panel. It's put on by Pipelines Mobile, the California State Entertainment Alliance, and also the Motion Picture Editors Guild. And we're so thrilled to bring you this panel today. And we really want to just take this opportunity to make sure that you have the resources, the information, and the inspiration to pursue this wonderful, wonderful industry. So if you have any questions, which I'm sure you will, I ask that you save them for the end. We'll be opening the floor for Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an icon that says Q&A. You can click that and then enter your question, and then we will get to those questions at the very end. So thank you so much for being here again. And let's just jump into these amazing panelists. I would like them to introduce themselves, and then we'll take it from there. Tracy, why don't you start? I think you're on mute or your audio's cut.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me, okay. Hi, Tracy from the Motion Picture Editors Guild. I've worked there for about 4 years. And prior to that, I worked at MPI, Motion Picture Industry Health Plan, for over 20 years.
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Nena?
Hi, I'm Nena Erb. I'm a picture editor. Some of the shows I work on are Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Little America. I'm currently on Generation, but I'm probably best known for my work on Insecure.
Last but not least.
Hi, I'm Chris Gomez, supervising sound editor. Some of the shows that I've worked on are Orange is the New Black, Better Things, and currently working on season 4 of Yellowstone.
See, I told you this is a great panel, guys. You're in for a treat. So this conversation is really going to outline like what the Guild is, what kind of opportunities are available in this industry, so you guys have a better understanding of this amazing industry and space. So let's just dive right in. Let's start with Tracy. Can you just please tell us what is the Motion Picture Editors Guild and who should be considering membership or who should join the Guild?
Okay, so Motion Picture Editors Guild negotiates new collective bargaining agreements, which are union contracts, and enforces existing union agreements with employers involved in post-production. Their contracts define requirements for wages, health insurance, retirement, pension, and safety, such as working turnaround time. When you join MPAG, you become part of a community of post-production professionals. It includes animation editors, engineers, music editors, re-recording mixers, story analysts, technical directors, trailer editors, and more. So we cover a lot of classifications under 700. Also, being a member of MPAG, offers you set wages and working standards. You also have field reps that are available to provide you with one-on-one guidance with anything from start paperwork to workplace violations. So those are some of the things that MPAG covers.
I love that. So see, it's not just about being an editor. I love that she described all those different types of roles. So you don't have to just be an editor to be a part of MPAG. So Tracy, what would you say would be the biggest benefit of being a part of the Motion Picture Editors Guild?
Well, we have many benefits, but your membership offers you valuable training, a lot of social networking, protections guaranteed by your union contracts. As an active member, you can post your resume and your availability on our Guild website. The Guild maintains a voluntary available for work list for the convenience of our members and employers. This is helpful to members who are available for work, as all prospective union members have 24/7 access to the Guild's database of the members' resumes. So like if Warner Brothers or Paramount wants to hire someone, they go to our site and they can see who's available and what their skills are. So it's a great way for our active members to get work. Members have access to our training room and equipment. It makes it possible for them to, work on their own material or just become more proficient with the systems and refresh their skills. We always like to keep you, up to date with all the software. We provide a variety of seminars from health to finance to building your resume, employer contacts, and new software demonstrations. We have a really awesome thing called the Masterclass. And the Masterclass is an opportunity to mentor Guild members on the creative process with an esteemed professional in their craft. We just did one with Terrell Gibson. It was super awesome. He did Ready or Not. And so we have about 8 or 10 students, and they just basically spend the weekend working on clips from his movie. So it was really awesome. We just did that. And then eligible participants have, they receive top health, the pension, and the IAP. So it's amazing, amazing coverage. As far as, way down the line, as you work those union hours, your employer is paying on your behalf into your health, your pension, and your IAP. And to get the health, it's 600 union hours in a qualifying period to get that health coverage. But it's amazing health coverage. So those are some of the benefits of joining the Guild.
Great, lots of benefits. And so I do want to kick it over to Nena and Chris. So how has these benefits that Tracy explained affected your lives and your respective careers? Like, how has the Guild helped you in your respective careers?
Gosh, I mean, it's incredible to have health insurance. I didn't have it for a long time after graduation. So that was kind of it was very new. It was like, wow, I can go to the doctors and I don't have to worry about if I have the money to do it because I now have a Guild job. And it's like, I know that there's kind of a floor of how I guess how little I can make, but it's not really little because the Guild minimums are pretty nice. But it's just nice to know that like, you don't have to, you know that you can be a bad negotiator like a lot of editors are, and you're still going to be okay because they have done a lot of the legwork for you so that you're not going to be taken advantage of. So it's just been really great, really, really great.
Well, it's nice to come from a creative standpoint where most of our minds are, hardwired in that sense, to think of negotiations and things like that. It's incredibly nice to just have that set for you. So it's just kind of one less thing to have to worry about. And you at least know that you can always go and check out what your union rates are. And you can at least have a basis of like, okay, is my employer paying me this much without you having to really second guess it? Because that's really hard. I know a lot of, sound editors that come in and work at non-union facilities, and it's just, you're trying to barter for how much you're going to make, and they'll give you this much. At least this way, if you are a Guild member, you have at least a starting point of, okay, I know I shouldn't be making less than this. So it kind of just takes some of that guesswork out for anybody who's not familiar with it. And then, yeah, the health insurance is amazing. When we had our daughter, I think we paid just a few $100s out of pocket as opposed to, I know people that have paid thousands when they've had their kids. So it's very nice.
So our key takeaway is the health insurance is amazing, which is important in today's day. Tracy, we hear a lot about terms like contract services and roster. Can we just explain what is the roster and then how do we get on it?
Absolutely. This is probably the number one question I get from new members. So basically, if you're going to be working in LA, it's strictly working in LA. You must be on the roster and in compliance with all safety courses. Contract services oversees all the studios as opposed to the studios doing this individually. If we didn't have contract services, each new job you would start, you'd have to do this whole process. So they're kind of like the one-stop shop. I like to refer to them as the DMV, and I'm sure Nena and Chris would agree with me because it is kind of like that process. They're located in Burbank. And basically they're looking at your non-union work. So for instance, if you want to get on the roster as an editor, they would need 175 non-union days. Anything that's worked in the last 3 years is considered. If you want to get on as assistant editor, it's 100 non-union days. Anything in the last 2 years they'll consider. So it's a little bit of a hurdle getting on the roster, building up that non-union work. But once you're on there and you're in compliance with all safety courses, you can start union work. The site has general access. So if Warner Brothers or Paramount wants to hire you, that's the first thing they're doing, is going to contract services, making sure you're on the roster and available to be hired for that union job.
I'm actually going to piggyback off of that, Tracy, because I don't want to assume that everyone knows the difference between non-union work and union work. Can you just very briefly explain the difference between the two? Because I'm assuming there might be someone out there like, what's the difference between non-union and union? I don't understand. So I just want to make sure that they understand the difference.
Absolutely. Union work is work that's covered under collective bargaining.
I'm sorry, your audio's a little low, Tracy.
Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah. So the union work is anything covered under the collective bargaining agreement. The non-union work obviously is not covered under that. So, you don't have all the perks like what I went over in the very beginning, the contracts and the defined wages and all of that. So that's pretty much the difference. I mean, that's the difference between the two.
So would you say like non-union work allows for a little more flexibility in a sense? Is that a right way to put it?
Non-union work, you don't have all the perks that you would with the union, the benefits and all of that. It is probably a little bit more flexible, but there are, that's where we see people often kind of taking advantage of, working overtime. And I'm sure Nena and Chris have experienced this in the non-union world. So that would pretty much be the difference. And they could probably elaborate on that too, the difference too, from working into the both worlds.
Okay. So perfect segue. So for Nena and Chris, like, how did you get your non-union work experience? Like, how do you get that work?
Gosh, well, I was fortunate enough to have one friend who took pity on me after graduation and was like, "You're not going to make a living as an art, as an art major. So why don't you come and get in the business?" And I kind of just, worked my way up as a PA and bounced around a little bit, and then discovered post. And yeah, fortunately, it was with a production company that was doing a lot of Oxygen's programming at the time when they first launched. And so a lot of it was non-union. And that's kind of where I got my days. And, fortunately, they were really nice. So I never felt taken advantage of. But there have been jobs where you're like, they tell you, "Oh, okay, great. So this is your rate. It's going to be for, 10 hours, but we expect 12. And you might do more overtime, but we're not going to pay you. And we might call you on a Saturday." And you're just like, okay, but you're starting out, so you're like, "Oh, I got to do it," but then you don't feel good because you're being taken advantage of. So I think that's kind of the biggest protection that the union offers that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and also I think it's the type of shows too. I think anything that's scripted television is all considered union work. Some of the things like reality TV, generally a lot of that still lies in the non-union work, although I think a lot of them are trying to unionize, which is nice. For me, it's a little bit different with sound, because with sound you have a few different options as to how to go about that. If you want to go strictly to just a sound editor route, then you do have to do your non-union hours. But there's also the ability to come in as a sound service person, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you could you're not necessarily doing the editorial work, but there's different things like you collect hard drives. The client comes in and brings hard drives. So there's different ways to get in without having, and that's kind of like the long road for us of like, maybe we don't do the PA work and things like that, but we are able to have these different, you're working like a transfer department, or you're a runner, you do different types of things. And then from there, you could kind of become, I think, a trainee or an apprentice. And then there's other ways. So there's the different outlets to how you can go about getting to the sound editor point, at least from our perspective. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit different from picture editorial department. So we have a few different routes, but, a lot of the non-union work for me was just, either low budget indie films, a lot of those, and, you know, occasional student projects that would come in that had a little bit of a budget. So those are always fun.
Very cool. So Tracy, when we talk about getting on the roster versus getting in the guild, because they're two separate things. Okay, so just because you're on the roster doesn't mean you're officially in the guild. So can you explain, once you get on the roster, how do you get into the guild officially?
Yes, so once you've been placed on the roster and you're in compliance with all
Audio's a little low, I'm sorry.
It's still a little low. Sorry. So once you're on the roster and you're in compliance with all those safety courses, you are now eligible to join the guild. We don't urge you to join the guild unless you have a union job lined up, because you will be paying the one-time initiation and processing fee, and then down the line you would be paying quarterly dues. And just to give you an idea of what the initiation is for editor, it is $3,700 plus the $100 processing fee. So you'd be paying $3,800 to join. That's for editor. That's our highest classification. And then down the line, you would be paying quarterly dues. So we really don't advise you to join until you have a union job lined up. But if you're on the roster, you're more than welcome to join the guild. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, Nena and Chris, so to Tracy's point, what path did you personally take to get into the guild, and what was your first union job? Did networking have a big part to play in that? Can you talk a little bit about your personal experience?
So I was very, very fortunate in my career path. One of my professors in college actually owned his own post sound facility. So I was able to get hired onto his company. And, you know, I started off working in, you know, transfer department as a sound service person. I mean, well, first it was working client services, doing, you know, nothing that was really, I was just kind of running around, grabbing food for everybody, working reception, watering plants, whatever I needed to do. And then worked my way up to being a sound service person, where I'm doing, you know, like I said, bringing hard drives, you know, setting things up so that our assistant sound editor can then take everything and actually do that particular work. And then for me, my first union editing job was Modern Family. Yeah, so it took, you know, you go from watering plants to doing that, but it takes, you know, it takes a while, and, you know, you have to kind of go about, and I was very fortunate that they were very helpful in helping me, you know, at least as far as the union goes, helping me handle a lot of the, you know, paperwork and anything that needed to go with that, and kind of guided me in my direction of like, okay, well, you need to do this now, or you need to do that. So yeah.
I kind of did a lot of non-union work as an assistant editor with the editor I was visiting. And eventually, you know, I realized that if I wanted to move up, I needed to do other things like edit on the side. And so I did a lot of like what Chris was talking about before, the non-union indie features and short films, and kind of got my days. I was keeping track of all the, you know, like they'll pay me like $100 for the whole film and I'll write the number of days and, you know, those kinds of things. And it took me a long time to get my days, because it's a lot of days while you're trying to still work as an assistant. And I think my first union job that got me my benefits was a half-hour comedy for Lifetime called Love Spring International.
Very cool. I do want to spend just a little bit of time in the latter half of my question, because I don't think a lot of people realize the power of networking. So I guess my first question would be, do you think networking had a big part to play in getting your first union job? And then also just speak to how they should be networking as students or graduates or freelance or whatever, wherever you are, networking is important. And I just want to kind of touch on that for a little bit. Like, what could they be doing now to prepare for membership in the guild or to get their first union job? How can they be networking?
Gosh, networking is, you know, it's taking them in all kinds of different forms now. A lot of it's happening on Zoom. Before, you know, I would advise people that, you know, if you have a movie that you like and you look up the editor or the sound editor or, maybe the composer, try and reach out to them in some way and see if they'll have a coffee with you. Most of the time people are pretty receptive to that because, like we were talking before, everyone thinks that the industry is full of directors and actors and writers and producers. No one's reaching out to editors, really. Very few people are. So chances are, if that's what your passion is, the people that you reach out to will be receptive and they'll meet with you. And yeah, it's interesting that I glossed over the networking part of the question, because my first union job on Love Spring was a direct result of networking, but I wasn't aware that I was networking, if that makes any sense. I interviewed with Megan Murphy Cross for Curb Your Enthusiasm to be an assistant, and I didn't get hired. She never told me why, but we kind of just like stayed in touch, and I would run into, we were neighbors, run into her like at the shoe store, at the market. Cut to a couple years later, she was in between seasons of Curb. I was cutting a musical competition show or something, and she happened to get a job as a post supervisor on it, because just to fill the time, until the next season started. And she was, of course, we recognized each other, we're friendly, and she kept an eye on my work and she liked it. And she decided that, on her next show, she would bring me with her. And that next show was Love Spring.
Yeah, it's super. It's interesting because with sound, most of us are generally based out of a facility or a company. So we kind of have our, we're not, sometimes we don't deal directly with production. So we kind of have our little hub. So for us, a lot of the networking happens is within these facilities. And there's different, I know prior to COVID, the Guild, the MPSC, which is the Motion Picture Sound Editor group, they have a lot of outreach for students that they can, contact to them. But Nena's 100% right. If you find somebody that you're interested in, just find a way to get a hold of all of us, because I am still shocked by how open and everybody has such, welcoming, open arms to anybody who's interested, because we always shocked when somebody comes and talks to us about, oh, you do this, and it's like, oh yeah, you're interested, great, let's sit down and let's just talk about it. And there's, even I still do it, I reach out to sound supervisors and re-recording mixers that have worked on these giant Hollywood movies, and you just send them a friend request on Facebook, and 9 times out of 10 everyone will be receptive and want to talk to you. And if for anybody who does go down the route of pursuing a sound career and you do end up in a facility, the people that you work with are going to be one of your biggest networking opportunities. For me, that's what I did. I kind of just got to know, the sound supervisors, the mixers, and everybody, and you kind of know them, you get to know them on a personal level. And eventually that's how I got a lot of my work. It was just, hey, we like you, we're going to bring you on board, we'll give you a shot. Great. I did that. And then, for me, my supervisor on Modern Family kind of took me under her wing and would put me on a lot of her pilots, some of her other shows, and eventually cut to a producer friend of hers needed, help with the last season of Orange is the New Black. She wasn't able to do it. It's like, well, hey, have Chris do it. Okay, great. So it gave me a call and it worked out, and we ended up going on to do Teenage Bounty Hunters afterwards, which was Genji Cohen's other show. So you really never know how it's going to end up. And the more people you get to know and the more people you constantly communicate with, the better it is. But yeah, don't be afraid to ever reach out to us, even if it's just social media. We're all on it 24/7 now anyway, so.
And really, I'm sure you guys can agree that, and look, I've met very little people who say, I really enjoy networking. It's like, I love it so much. Like, no, I know networking can seem very daunting, especially if you're shy or consider yourself an introvert. But like Nena said, there's so many different ways that you can network. And this industry is really built upon you being proactive, because opportunities aren't going to fall in your lap. And I think a lot of people feel like, oh, because I have a degree or whatever, I'm going to just get a job. And that's just not how it works. You have to open your mouth. You have to take a risk. You have to put yourself out there. I mean, the worst that can happen is they don't get back to you. and it's okay. And then the worst that can happen is they say no, you're still alive, okay? So I just wanna just stress that, especially a majority of you in attendance today are in school or graduating. Networking is so crucial, okay? You never know, as Chris said, you just never know where that could lead. But closed mouths don't get fed, okay? So we gotta open our mouths, we gotta reach out on LinkedIn, social media, because this business really is about being proactive. So those are just my 2 cents I wanted to throw in there. And so Nena, you worked on the hit show Insecure, okay? You all know Insecure, Issa Rae's show. Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience working on the show? And then you also brought a clip from the show to show us today as well.
Yeah, I have been a fan of the show since day one. And I never knew that it was something that I would be able to work on. I just know I admired it from afar. And one of the reasons why I loved it so much was because, you know, when my family and I immigrated here, we settled in South LA, and that show is based in South LA, and it shows like all the great little hidden gems of that community that like no one really focused on before. And so it was really special when they called me in for an interview on season 3. And I was so thrilled to be on it. And, you know, what was great is I immediately noticed that everybody on the show was very welcoming. I had, you know, worked on many other shows before this where the star is also the producer. And, you know, some people are more approachable than others, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's, you know, people are busy. I get it. But Issa, it was the strangest thing. Like the first time I worked with her in the room, I felt like I had known her forever, which is not something that happens all the time. Like we were just able to talk about ideas and sit and laugh. And we just really, you know, worked well together. So my experience there has been phenomenal. And yeah, and this season 4 got a lot of Emmy love, which is great. So
you did bring a clip today, so we do want to show you guys, and you know, feel free. That was amazing. So how did you go from receiving dailies to this? Like, what is your job flow or your workflow entail?
I had known that this episode was going to be a little different. We had many meetings about it, and everyone knew that they wanted the social media graphics to be a little bit different than what they normally do on the show. And since in season 3, I kind of had the other strange episode that was done differently, so they were like, "You're perfect for it. You'll come up with something." And so, you know, I kind of sat there and just looked at all the dailies, and I was thinking to myself, you know, this show was beautifully directed, but like to make it really special, I was thinking like, okay, if Issa's feeling empty, why don't we make it so that everything is 50-50, and the other half, she's always checking her phone, seeing if Molly texted, seeing if Molly left a message, and she never did. And always on the other, you know, half the frame is someone else. It's her brother, it's her assistant, it's her friend, Kelly. It's, you know, her looking on social media, but it's never Molly. And so I kind of took that and ran with it. And my assistant, Lynarian Hubbard, I actually consider her my teammate. I don't really call her my assistant. She was going to be here today. She wanted to be here today, but she's in labor. So she's having a baby. But she was so just a great collaborator. I come up with crazy ideas and I tell her, and she just says, okay. And then she turns something out like that. I mean, she made all the graphics that you see. I mean, the picture-in-picture 50-50, that's an easy thing to do in the editing software that we use. But, you know, if you've seen the whole episode, there's a lot of different social media things that are in the entire thing. And she made them all. It's amazing. Like she uses Photoshop, After Effects, and like she's so creative. And this is when like some people will think, oh, being an assistant's not creative. Not necessarily so, because look at what she did. She was able to take all of her creativity and like really kind of interpret things that I wanted and put it in a way that's just like flawless. And because she was able to do that, we avoided a lot of notes. So
Always good.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think because she was able to create those graphics while I was cutting the scenes, the process was so much faster than normal, because usually we do everything and then talk to a VFX house and they would do some temps and we would go back and forth on notes and eventually lock it at something, once you're at a point where everyone's happy with it. But fortunately she was able to kind of basically jump over all of that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that too. It's a great clip. So I do want to kick it over to Chris. So we've seen an episode, we've seen Nena's wonderful skills. So at what point do you come in as a sound supervisor? Like once Nena locks in an episode like that, then what happens? Like what is a day in the life of a sound supervisor like?
It's funny because we're usually, sometimes it depends. I'm very curious because on an episode like that, there's always the possibility that the sound supervisor would probably be brought in a little bit earlier to start fleshing out any particular sound ideas. That does happen. But generally, my first time seeing that episode is in a spotting session with Nena and everybody else, right when they lock it. They'll call me in and say, hey, we're going to spot this episode tomorrow. Great, I'll come in and I'll watch it for the first time. We'll sit down with the picture editor, producers, music editors, sometimes composers, although usually the music editor will be the one that takes all the notes for them. And we just kind of go through, flesh out ideas. They'll send me ADR lists that they have, specific sound notes that they have. If there's problematic dialogue areas, that Nena would find, she would give me a list of like, hey, we're having trouble with these. Can we fix these or do we need to ADR them? And every show is a little bit different, but that's generally kind of the way it works. We'll pitch ideas. If there are any sound ideas, we'll kind of flesh them out in spotting. And then from there, I take all that information, jot everything down, write everything down, type it up. And then I send it out to my team of sound editors, our, Foley artist, our dialogue editor, our effects editors. And then, yeah, we just kind of start going through and start putting all the pieces together. And it really, a lot of it is show specific. Some of the heavy visual effects shows, you're on those probably, for months before, before they ever, maybe even before they even lock, and yeah, I think that's it. Anything else that I might have glossed over there?
I just want to make sure they understand like the kind of like the process and how both of your roles are integral into making a clip like that, and then how just understanding the workflow a little better. So I do have a few more questions. Like I said before, if you do have questions for our panelists, we're going to be getting to them at the end. So please drop them in the Q&A, not the chat. Drop them in the Q&A and I will get to as many as possible after we wrap the discussion, which is very soon. So now that we've seen the clip, we've talked about the workflow, we've talked about the careers, the guild, et cetera, I do want to make sure that they leave with some action items. So if each of you could just answer this second to last question of what realistic things can everyone listening right now be doing to have a successful career in the guild or editing or in sound? What could they be doing right now?
I would suggest graduating seniors, if for those that want to be a picture editor, go over to America Cinema Editors website, and they have an internship program. I'm on the committee of that internship program, and it's phenomenal. Editors like Joy McMillan and many others that have gone through there have done super well with their careers. Basically, you apply, I think applications usually open in May, and we pick someone. The sessions start around October, and it's about a month long. The first week is a lecture series where they introduce you to other assistant editors and other parts of other people that are working in other parts of post. And the second week will put you in either a feature film room or third week TV room. And then, the fourth week will be something like, we always make them do a week in reality, even though some people may not want to, but that's usually where a lot of people, like we talked about before, are going to get their days, because a lot of them is, a lot of shows are not union. And then the last week is facilities, where they'll go to somewhere like Formosa or Photochem and kind of meet the people that run that end of it. So they understand that, when they're prepping something for turnover, like they're turning something over from the block cut to someone like Chris, like they understand where it's going to go, and they talk to them and they understand why they need it a certain way. And so that's the whole program. And basically, like, you're going to be plugged into, you know, a movie that you would never have contact, you know, or access to. So I highly recommend people apply for that internship. And I can put the link in the chat.
Yes.
And then for sound, I would say for most everybody, you know, if you have an interest in sound and you know, this is a career that you've thought about, or even just have some remote interest in it, find out who, you know, the films that you love, and find out the people that have worked on there. Because going back to what we talked about, the easiest way for us that most of us get in touch with each other is just reaching out to one another. You know, like I said, reach out to, you know, the Guild and motion picture sound editors. They're great at, you know, they have different student programs. Reach out to the sound facilities, you know, because with us, it's most of the sound houses are the ones that still control, you know, that's where the work funnels through. Reach out to them and see what kind of internship programs they have. You would be surprised as to how many people might, you know, might welcome you in and, you know, give you an opportunity to just, you know, oh, great, you know, why don't you come in and, you know, just shadow this person. And everybody's kind of working on different programs, you know, as far as their internships go. But, you know, the reason I say reach out to a lot of us is just, we can be a lot of your first steps into these places. It's a little intimidating to just reach out to the company. And a lot of times they don't really make it that obvious as to who to contact. So, you know, the best thing you can do is, you know, if you have a sound designer that you really admire or the work of, you know, find out who it is and find them on social media and reach out to them. Most everybody, look, we're all socially awkward as well. So we, you know, we welcome anybody else that, if you're a little bit shy, so are we. You know, most of us spend our time in, you know, windowless rooms for 9 to 10 hours a day. So we're always, you know, and we can put you in touch with people if we don't know. And a lot of times some people just take, you know, people under their wings, students and who have an interest, just, you know, hey, you come on by and see what, you know, see what we do and check it out. And then, yeah, just don't be afraid to talk to us.
I would say trying to build up those non-union days is very important. The work that contract services recognizes, anything that's been broadcast, streaming, released, those are the things that they're looking for. And we always tell people there's a lot of non-union work in the trailer world and in the unscripted world. And that's where a lot of people get that non-union work experience to get themselves on the roster. And then good old networking. And I know I can't say enough about networking, and that's why we hold a ton. I mean, because of COVID now we can't, but we hold a ton of mixers at the Guild, and you know, we'll do these mixers around town where people will meet at a you know, a cool bar, and we provide all the food, and you just have to buy your drinks. And then we do seminars and all kinds of things to get everybody together. And I've seen a lot of people get work just from networking. So. Mm-hmm.
And can I, do you mind if I just add? So this is what's funny about networking is, Nena, is your music editor on Insecure Michael Brake?
Yes.
So I've never met Nena before, but Michael Brake was our music editor on Orange is the New Black and also Teenage Bounty Hunters. So it's funny because just right now, I've, you know, somebody I've never met before, I already have a connection to, and you quickly find out how small the post community really is. So, you know, just by knowing one person, they know somebody else who might know somebody else. So yeah, already, you know, you don't even have the 6 degrees of separation, you have 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Such a big industry, but so incredibly small. And you'll find that out when you network, because we're all gonna network, right? Yes.
And you can actually, I don't know if they, I mean, obviously you can't do it now, but a lot of the award shows, you know, especially the craft specific award shows, for us, it's the Golden Reels. A lot of those have things that they'll set up for students, and you go in there, and I'm telling you, it's the people who have worked on every big feature film that you can imagine or every big television show will be there, and every single one of them will sit down and have a conversation with you, and, you know, answer your questions, and, you know, things. There's everybody has so many different outlets for you to come in and talk to all of us, and yeah, just don't ever be afraid to come and do that, because you never know who you'll meet.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. We have so many questions to get through, which I love. So this will just be popcorn style unless they specify who the question's going to. And so I'm so glad that we have some ample time to get through these. So I'll just ask them, and then whoever wants to answer, we'll just do it that way. Okay, so someone's asking, how does someone even get their start in the industry with zero connections? I love editing with all my heart, but feel like I have no idea how to get started or work my way up.
Well, I had no connections. So yeah, I think if you love editing, check out the internship, the ACE internship. Reach out to me after this, and you know, I can maybe introduce you to someone that's maybe working in a genre that you want to work in. Yeah, so you know, like Chris said, we're very approachable, and I'm very used to meeting with students and whatnot. So don't be afraid to reach out. And you know, again, yeah, if there's anyone else whose work you admire, reach out to them.
Also, too, I just want to piggyback really quick. I should have said this before I started asking questions, but if our panelists have any other, I know Nena dropped something in the chat, but if you guys know of any job boards, forums, internship information, really cool resources or organizations that the attendees could be plugging into to assist them in their creative and career pursuits, please drop them in the chat so that way our attendees leave with obviously more information, but tangible resources that they can plug into when they leave this conversation as well. So attendees, our panelists are going to drop that information in the chat. Make sure you save the chat and take the most advantage of these resources because they're here to help you, as they've elaborated so many times in this conversation. We are here to help. So I just wanted to throw that out there and make sure you guys get that information. Okay, back to the questions. Can you elaborate on the 600 hours needed to qualify to become a member? Can they all be non-union hours?
I think okay, the 600 hours is to initially qualify for the health plan. But to get on the roster for the non-union hours, it would either be 100 non-union hours or 175 non-union hours. So if they're asking about the 600 hours, I think they're referring to the health plan.
And that's actually a perfect segue to the next question. If someone wants to know, how do you document your qualifying non-union hours?
I just saved my paycheck stubs, and then I got letters from producers on the projects that I work with, verifying that they're real paycheck stubs.
That's probably the easiest way.
Well, if you go to our website and then you go to the Join West Coast section, you go to the editorsguild.com, it will actually talk about all the paperwork that you need to gather as far as the paycheck stubs and the letter from the employer to get on the roster. And so it talks about all that you would need to gather.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
This one's for Nena and Chris. When you first started out, did you make some sort of reel or editing reel? How did you advertise yourself when you were first starting out?
I didn't. Yeah, when I was first starting out, I had no reel, I had nothing. It was like no website, nothing. Just kind of, you know, approach people, and they were helping me out of their own generosity. So I have one now, not a reel, but a website, but I don't know how useful that is. It's just purely done on the prompting of my agent.
I'm going to say something that most teachers would probably kill me for saying. We don't use reels for each other. It's great for practice and getting your skills together. For sound, I tell this to every intern that I've ever come across, your best tool and asset is your personality. Because the people that I get along with, that I see have a great personality, are fun to be around with, really optimistic, want to learn, those are the ones that everyone is going to gravitate towards. I spend more time with some of my editors than I do with my own family, because it's just when it's busy, it's busy. If I got to spend 9 hours on a dub stage with you, if you're a great person to be around, I'm gonna always, you know, make the pitch to want to use you for everything. You know, and it's more, you know, you have a lot of editors who just have a really, you know, they're just really difficult to be around, and it rubs off on everybody. We're all like a family, and you know, I want to make sure that I'm with people who are going to carry on the same attitude that I have, and are going to move forward to put the work in. And those are the ones that are, you're gonna, you know, people are gonna take a shot with you. And if you don't have any experience, people will be more forgiving and want to work with you and mentor you. Because if you're just kind of cynical and very difficult to be around, you know, even if you turn in a great reel or, you know, great work, people are gonna be like, well, it's very, if you're a difficult person to work around, it will go around. And I always say that the better, you know, your people skills and your, you know, your attitude, and not to say that, you know, because I do know some people are just naturally shy and they have a difficult time, you know, and that's perfectly okay. But it's, you know, getting to know people is going to be your biggest, you know, biggest tool more than a reel will.
I think that's such an important point. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I feel like a lot of people just starting out are so hyper focused on experience, which is important, but it's not, they're not only looking at your experience. Like in this industry, people want to work with people they like, because we have to look at you every day. Okay. So I'm just saying that to say, keep that in mind. You don't have to be an extrovert and talkative and using your hands like I do to make a great impression. Introverts are just as successful as extroverts and vice versa. I just want to break that stigma that you don't have to be extroverted to be successful in entertainment. And also too, that your personality goes a long way, okay? So even if you don't have a lot of experience, put yourself out there, network, give yourself some credit that you have a lot to bring to the table, and that will get you very far. So don't be so tunnel focused on the fact that you don't have a lot of experience, because we want to work with people we like, okay? Next question. Are there any resources for data wrangler jobs, or how does someone get their start doing that?
Data wrangler. Can they elaborate?
I'm not sure what that is.
I'm not sure.
Like a DIT person?
It's anonymous, but if you could just private message me what you meant, and we'll come back to that question. I want to make sure we get an answer for you. If you ask that question, just send me a private message and elaborate, please. Thank you. We'll move on to the next question in the meantime. I noticed that you have to provide proof of payment for your non-union work to get on the roster. Is it acceptable to provide that proof through invoices or Venmo payment?
Because contract services, they actually administer that paperwork. I do believe they'll accept invoices, but we always, you know, ask you to go to contract services because they're the ones that are actually administering and approving your non-union work. So just providing them with your invoices, paycheck stubs, letter from the employer as much as possible. And once you submit that paperwork over there, they send it over to a roster specialist, and they let you know if that non-union work will qualify you to get you on the roster.
This next question is for Nena. What differences do you find in editing a show like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend with singing and dancing as opposed to a show that doesn't have those things?
You know, I think, you know, storytelling is storytelling, whether there's musical numbers or not. I think the biggest difference is that with musical numbers, you have to make sure you have the time to really go through all the material. Yeah, and sometimes on Crazy X, you would have anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 musical numbers. So, and they don't give you extra time. So you just you have to be very disciplined, you know, because those gotta get done. So I think that would be the biggest difference. But other than that, yeah, they're both, you know, I've worked on a lot of comedies. That one's comedy drama. So it's just telling the story.
So I think we got some clarification on the previous questions. I think they were talking about DIT or ingesting footage. So if someone were interested in that particular career, how do they get their start doing that?
I'm not really sure. I've known a few assistant editors that would go on set on smaller indie projects and kind of offer to be the DIT because they don't have the budget for it. But other than that, I feel, like Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's a camera department hire, right?
Yeah, I think it is a camera hire.
Okay, it's a camera hire. Are there some resources that they could maybe look into to find out more information about that particular career path? Is that something that they can find on the Guild website, or do we have any other information we could give them? We can drop it in the chat for you guys. We'll find it for you, promise. Next question. They say it's a nerdy question, but it's a good one. What are your home working rigs like? During quarantine, it became more apparent than ever that a good home rig is so important.
I'm curious to see what Chris's home rig looks like.
Well, I'm fortunate enough that I've been working from home even before COVID. But I have a very simple setup. I have a Mac Mini, my headphones, some speakers, and that's it. And it's just a couple monitors. I mean, it's kind of unglamorous. Here, you guys want to see? Here, I'll pull this apart. Let me turn off this virtual filter, turn it off. So yeah, see, I have my speakers and my computer. And that's it. My hard drives. It's very anticlimactic. I apologize. I do know sound editors and supervisors who have, full 5.1 rigs in their home. I do not, and I know some editors that don't even have speakers. They just cut on headphones. So
I need to know what those headphones are.
I'll send you the link for these.
Yeah. Mine's pretty simple. I used to run everything off of my laptop if I was to do anything from home, but I haven't lately. And the show I'm on right now, they have me remoting in from a box. I can show you. It's even more simpler than Chris's. 1 second. I don't know if you can see this. Can you guys?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so that's all it is. It's just the monitors and that little box called the amulet. So that's it. And that box allows me to tap in.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Nena, when you're actually in the edit bay, your equipment is far more than what, sometimes what we need just on the sound editorial side. I could run off of a laptop if I wanted to. I know a lot of music editors that's all they use is just their laptop and a hard drive, because it's so simple to run Pro Tools for us. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to vary. Well, for editors anyways, right now, I think it's going to vary show by show because I'm on Generation and that's how they're doing it. Insecure, which I'm starting in February, they're going to send a full Avid to my house. So I'm going to have to find room for that.
Speaking of that, Nena, on Insecure, how important was the music to your editing flow? Did you guys clear music ahead of time to know what the vibes were like, or was it of the opposite situation?
Oh, we have a music supervisor that does drops every week. And so he, by the end of the show, we'll have like several thousand cues to choose from. But every week, he'll drop, he'll do a playlist and he'll send you like maybe 5 or 6 albums of music that he likes, that he thinks might work for the show. And it's our job to kind of pick it as we go along to see, which lyrics fit with the episode, the tone, the story that we're trying to tell, and the vibe. And sometimes it's not clearable, sometimes it is. So you never know until, you lock picture and then they start trying to clear it. And sometimes it's very, it can be a little heartbreaking sometimes because you just fall in love with a song and you're like, no.
Get attached.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for aspiring sound editors that do not live in LA? Is it possible to get work remotely?
It is. Well, it's possible to work remotely. Definitely the networking has changed. I had someone reach out to me from England last year that they were planning on moving to the States, and they ended up staying out there, but they reached out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on LinkedIn as I probably should be, and it took me a while, but that's the thing, is sometimes we kind of get caught up in our little bubble, so it takes us a while to respond. But it is most definitely, there is sound jobs available all around the world. There is stuff, in the UK, there's stuff on the East Coast. There's facilities everywhere now, down south in Canada, the Vancouver, Toronto area. So really a lot of it is just kind of trying to do some research depending on where you are. LA, New York, and London are still kind of the go-to spots. That's pretty much where the majority of the work gets filtered through, and a lot of the sound facilities ended up being. So it might be a little bit difficult to kind of get that, personal interaction, but it is definitely possible. And, COVID has made it just that much more accessible for everybody.
Absolutely. This next question says, for students who are graduating and may not have access to the resources available through the university, for example, free software like Photoshop, etc., what recommendations do you have for them to keep up their editing skills? What software would you suggest they purchase or invest in if that is the case?
Was this for picture editing or sound editing?
Let's see. They don't specify. It just says editing. I think what they're trying to say, if they don't have access to like free software through the university, what should they be investing in or purchasing?
I think Avid actually gives students free versions. They're kind of modified. So I think if you want to do picture editing, Avid will provide that for you. I don't know if Photoshop or Adobe offers the same thing, but I believe they're on a subscription basis now. So you can probably do it for like $10 a month if you just want to do Photoshop, or, I think it's like $49 for the entire suite. So you get After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, all that.
And the Avid does have special student discounts for Pro Tools. And a lot of it's the introductory version of Pro Tools, but it's enough so you can still use it from home if you don't have access to, school resources. And yeah, we're actually trying to figure that out too, because that is kind of, I know that's a very difficult thing, is once you come out of school and you don't have access to these, you're like, where's the software coming from? But the good thing is, like Nena mentioned, a lot of them are switching to subscription services. So you're not having to pay, for Pro Tools. The highest version of Pro Tools can run you up to $1,000 just about buy it outright. Yeah, so you can do monthly subscriptions to it that'll be a little bit more manageable financially. So that's a good thing too.
Very cool, thank you. For Nena, what is it like to be a female picture editor? Are you given the same opportunities?
I have no idea if I'm given the same opportunities. I just know it took me a long time to get here. I think things are changing, and I think that's great. I am finding that I'm often not the only female editor on the show anymore, which is always fantastic. I've spent, I don't know, the earlier part of the 18 years as typically the only woman, typically the only, person of color in post, and sometimes on a lot of the productions, like, there's just very few. But fortunately it's changing for the better, and I'm hoping to help move that needle even further. And I hope that one day this won't be a question, that this will just be a norm.
Yes. This next question is for Chris. Have you ever used the Reaper DAW for sound editing, or do you use Pro Tools?
I only use Pro Tools. I know some sound designers that might use Innuendo or different specialty programs just when they're creating their sounds. But as far as it's a standard to use Pro Tools, because every mix stage uses Pro Tools. So eventually your sessions will have to make it to a mix stage. So it is kind of, that's pretty much the only software you really need. You definitely can have your specialty ones if you do enjoy working in them. But eventually everything will have to make its way to Pro Tools. I've worked with, people who don't have Pro Tools, and it can be a little bit difficult because there's so many workarounds. So eventually it will be an investment that you'll have to make for sound. Because yeah, every mix stage across the world will always run, Pro Tools.
Okay. Our next question is, what skills are useful, or what skills stand out to be chosen for a picture editing job?
Personality is a big one. Ability to listen. Yeah, and just and being able to anticipate people's needs, I think. And that only comes after you work with them, of course. But yeah, really, it's just having a good personality, easygoing, and being able to listen to what people are looking for.
Gotcha. Can the panelists explain what shadowing is and why it's helpful when you're starting out in Hollywood?
Yeah. So shadowing is pretty much, it kind of falls along the lines of what used to be the, mentorships, where you kind of just, you stick by a sound editor or a sound supervisor, re-recording mixer, and you kind of just follow their steps, but just watching them and seeing what their day-to-day is and what the, their workflow is. And you kind of just see little bits and pieces of what their job entails, because they're so different for us. We have different types of editors. So everybody's workflow is very different. A dialogue editor will be, chances are 9 times out of 10, they'll be on headphones for 9 hours a day. So that might not be as fun shadowing, because you might be in a couch in the back, just watching at, the back of their heads on headphones. You have some sound effects editors that'll just be blowing stuff up in their rooms all day. Sound supervisors, you're running around town, doing ADR sessions, answering a bunch of emails. So you're kind of just, for shadowing for us, you're just kind of watching what it is that we do on a daily basis, and just kind of, asking questions, whatever you may do, whatever you may have, just to kind of get an idea of what it is that we're doing.
Do you have any advice for recent graduates wanting to get into animatic editing?
Sadly, that is one field I don't know much about. Animatics meaning like probably VFX, right? Previs editing, kind of. Is that what they're referring to?
They didn't specify.
Okay.
Open to clarification for whoever asked that. We want to make sure we get the question answered. Oh, more like animating storyboards.
Oh, okay. I would say, I feel like a lot of people kind of all venture into different types of editing from assisting. If you're like on a show like a Marvel project or something, they'll have someone that will edit the storyboards. Or if you're on a Disney show, maybe you'll hear of like another animation series that's going to happen, and you can maybe get on that project and kind of let them know that you want to start cutting storyboards. Because I think that's basically what editors do, right? I feel like that's what they do in animated programming, because you have to cut the storyboards first before they actually make the animation. So
Animation workflow is very different from
yeah, like that's my very, very rudimentary understanding of it.
Yeah.
Next question is, what is your experience in the unscripted world, like live TV? What is it like?
Live TV?
I guess how I'm reading this is in comparison to, say, dailies. What is the unscripted world like live TV like reality TV?
Well, from my experience, I think you get a lot more material to look through on the nonfiction projects that I've worked on, like Project Greenlight. I did that 4 years ago, and they shot for a full year before editorial even started. So there was a lot of material to watch through. Whereas like, Insecure, they might shoot 4 hours a day, and I can kind of watch that and then still cut it. So I would say the biggest difference is just the amount of material that you have to wade through.
Okay.
I do wonder though, sorry if I may ask a question. I do wonder from Chris's end, do you you probably have experienced sound supervising both of those genres. Has it been, how's that been different for you?
I've actually never worked on non-scripted television, but I know people who have. And from a sound perspective, you kind of just hit the ground running. You know, I know the sound supervisor who did Deadliest Catch, and for them it was just, you know, where we have a lot of the time of going through and fixing things and saying, well, you know, this isn't working. Let's bring them in for ADR. But you get none of that. This is what you have. Make it work one way or another. You don't really get a redo. It's just take what you have and just work your magic. That's it. So you don't really get the kind of the TLC that some of the, you know, that we get with the scripted work.
Thank you, guys. Are there any resources to find paid non-union editing gigs, and how do they officially count as hours for getting onto the roster and into the guild?
We don't really have any resources. Again, the work that is that contract services recognizes as anything that's been broadcast, streaming, released at a film festival, things of that nature. So and the best thing to do if you have, like, if you are trying to get on as assistant editor onto the roster, the best thing you can do is submit that paperwork over to them, or just reach out to them to find out if the non-union project that you're working on would qualify to get them on the roster. So that's always good to do, kind of forecast it.
Thank you, Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Is the union strictly Los Angeles, or does it expand to other states wherever the industry is? For example, Atlanta. Are there a lot of post-production jobs outside of LA? And is it possible to have a remote post-production editing career, especially now with the pandemic? I know that was a lot, so I'm going to repeat it. Is the union strictly LA, or does it expand to other states? Are there a lot of post-production jobs outside of LA, and is it possible to have a remote editing career, especially now with COVID?
We actually have an office in New York. So if you are working in New York, you would want to reach out to our New York office and start the join process. There is no roster requirement. Same with Central, you would reach out to our New York office. So if you're working in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you join the guild, you can work pretty much anywhere. If you were to join California, you would want to, and you're going to be working, they're hiring you in California, but they're transporting you somewhere else. You would need to talk to one of our field reps, because distant hire might apply to that. But basically, you can, once you've joined, you can work anywhere. And the only place where the roster is required is LA, strictly. So.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, if any of the attendees wanted to reach out to you guys personally, what is your preferred method of contact? LinkedIn or your email? They're asking how can they reach out to you personally after this conversation?
Email would be great. I can give Haley my email if she wants to, if they want to ask her for it.
Yeah.
If that's okay, Haley.
Okay, that's the consensus. So Haley from CSU EA will have the panelists' emails. If you want their email, you remember we talked about being proactive. This is great practice. So make sure you reach out to Haley to get their emails, and reach out to the panelists directly if you want to do that. And her email's in the chat. She just dropped it in the chat. Haley, thank you so much. How much has COVID changed working in your field?
Not a lot in terms of the actual editing work. It's a little slower, and you're at the mercy of your internet connection. But it's, for me, it's been the same. I don't know how it's going to be when we start mixing. So that would be interesting. I'm curious to find out what that's going to be like, which will start in a couple weeks.
I can answer that for you, because that's definitely changed a bit. So for us, a lot of it has just gone to the just remote world, which we were somewhat doing pre-COVID, we did things like when we did ADR sessions, we would do things with what we call Source Connect. So we might all be, myself, producer, creatives will be in Los Angeles, but we might have an actor that's in, say, Texas. So they'll be in a studio in Texas and we'll remote that way. The biggest thing is now when we do shoot ADR, it's all done, via Zoom. We all kind of chat that way. So you lose some of that face-to-face interaction. As far as the actual editorial work goes, it's still, like Nena said, a lot of it's still the same. For most of us, we're either working in our little studios or at home, which we were all doing pre-COVID. And then when we actually get to the actual mix, that's going to be a little bit different, because now what you're doing is when we would do a playback, when we would, take all the material, all the sound material and put it to, Nena's cut of the film or the show, and make everything sound great. We would have our playback for our, for Nena, our producers, executive producers, anybody else who wanted to come in. And you would have sometimes anywhere from 2 to 20 people on a mix stage, and everybody would chime in, give their thoughts. Now it's very, very few people. I think because of COVID restrictions, we're allowed to have the immediate team. So on a mix stage, it would be your dialogue and music. You would have 2 re-recording mixers, your sound supervisor, your music editor. And then I think we're only allowed maybe 1 or 2 other people on a stage. Every place is a little bit different, depending on the size of your stage. But yeah, COVID's no longer done that. So now we're doing it virtually through different programs, either through Source Connect or Evercast, where it's just like this, we'll play the show back and they'll watch it in headphones or in a system that they might have at home. And then you do your notes that way. It's a little bit, I think Nena hit the nail on the head, where everything just takes a little bit longer now. And there are some obstacles that you have to come across. Your internet service is one of the biggest ones, but yeah, it's just, everything's just going a little bit slower is all it is.
Thank you. So we have about 9 minutes left. So I'll try and get through as many of these questions as possible. So if I don't get to your question, I truly do apologize, because we have some great questions. So we'll try to work quickly. How do you know what a director wants when you're editing? Do you ever feel pressure that your edits are not what's desired?
I always feel like that. No, but we usually have a tone meeting with the director and a producer. So you go into it with a pretty good idea of what they're looking for. Of course, sometimes in the dailies, you discover something that's kind of amazing that no one was expecting. So I always like to try that out. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to read other people's minds.
We're not psychics. Would you suggest more freelance work first before joining a company, or just apply to work at larger companies?
I know a lot of sound editors that are strictly freelance, so it's really kind of your own personal preference, and a lot of it is just kind of where the work takes you. There really is no right or wrong way to do it. I know people in the sound community that they just have their network of people that hire them, so they just kind of bounce around wherever they're at. If they're at Sony, they'll be at Sony. If they're at Warner Brothers, they'll go there. They're at Formosa, they'll go to Formosa. So yeah, a lot of the people that I work with, aren't necessarily just centrally located in one facility. So it's kind of really just whatever works best for you, and really where the work takes you.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know of any editors that do features or television that are with a big company. I think we're all freelance, other than trailer and promo editors.
Okay, next question. Some big companies, i.e. Universal, Warner Brothers, do not hire people who are not union. They say you should become a union, then apply for the job. Then the guild says, get a job, then apply to the union. It feels like a catch-22. What is the right way? Please advise. I really appreciate everything you guys do.
Well, I think the biggest hurdle, as we've talked about, is getting on the roster. So, that's the first thing you need to do if you have the non-union work, is to apply with them. If you don't have the non-union work, it's just a matter of, again, building that up, networking. But what happens is, let's just say Warner Brothers wants to hire you and you're on the roster. As long as you're on the roster, you can accept that union work and then you are eligible to join the guild. So the most important thing is getting on the roster if you're going to work in LA.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've paid your dues, so to speak, with your non-union hours, what are your long-term goals as editors?
Keep doing work that I love with people that I like. I mean, it seems very unambitious, but yeah, I only work on projects that I like, that I would watch, and it drives my agent nuts because I turn a lot of stuff down. But I have to love it, and so that's kind of my only requirement. I have to love the project, and hopefully the people are awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think Nena's right. There really is no, I mean, I think our goals is just to kind of keep doing this, to keep working, you know, the awards and everything, or if we get them, great. If not, you know, it's still, I can win an award tomorrow and I still have to go back into the office the following day. So yeah, I'm with Nena. You just, as long as we get to keep making content that we create and love, I'm okay with that.
I had a couple, Tracy, this is for you. I had a couple questions. I know we touched on it briefly during the discussion, but just so the attendees have a full understanding of how to get on the roster. If they want to get on the roster, what's like the formula? Like, okay, you need to do this first and then focus on this. I think they're still a little bit confused as to how to get on the roster.
Yeah, it is confusing. Basically, when you go to our join page, the editorsguild.com, it'll talk about the paperwork that you need to gather. In the right-hand corner is the contract services information, and that's where you need to email your non-union work. I like to think of contract services like the DMV, because they are literally giving you a safety pass to work union in LA. And that's the easiest way to kind of keep it separate from the guild, is thinking of them like the DMV. You do have to be in compliance with all those safety courses. And if they're having trouble, you know, distinguishing the two, they can always reach out to me at the Editors Guild. My contact info is on there, Tracy Passio, and I can set up a conference call with them and explain it, because it is a little confusing. So I'm available.
So be proactive and
yes, reach out to me.
Get your questions answered. Okay, this is the last question. Is it important to get an agent as a picture or sound editor?
I'm curious, Chris, do you guys have agents?
We do not have agents. Your work is left for you to find, or hopefully through the post facility that you work with. So it is that is about one of the most drastic differences between the two of us.
Yeah, I've done it without an agent and with an agent. I don't make as much with an agent, but I much prefer it because they get to do the negotiating. And if anything happens that isn't quite sitting right with me, they can take care of it.
Amazing. Well, we are nearing our time. I do want to take this time to thank the panelists for carving out their time on a Saturday to share this amazing insight with everyone in attendance. Thank you for everyone who showed up this morning. I know it's a weekend, but that just goes to show that you're being proactive about your career. Like I said before, please follow the California State University Entertainment Alliance. They have so many great events and resources for you guys to plug into as you navigate your creative career in this wonderful industry. Like I said before, if you want to reach out to any of our panelists, please reach out to Haley. She has dropped her email in the chat to reach out to our panelists directly. And lastly, don't forget to download the Pipelines mobile app in your app stores to connect to both job and training opportunities in tech, entertainment, and creative. So I hope that you guys enjoyed today's conversation. We will do more of these in the future. We have a bi-weekly series in partnership with the California State Entertainment Alliance and Pipelines that focuses on a different area of entertainment every other week. So please stay tuned to their page to learn about when these events will be taking place. And have a great weekend. Do something fun. I hope something was said today to inspire you. We need your voices. This is an incredible industry, and we're so happy that we're able to share this insight with you today. Thank you so much, and happy Saturday. Bye, guys.